Thanks for joining me, everyone. For those who don't know me yet, my name is Ron Levine from Mindfulness and Blue Jeans. I've been practicing mindfulness and insight meditation for 24 years. And I was brought to this practice during a time when I was dealing with clinical anxiety and depression, panic disorder, agoraphobia, a whole bunch of things that really brought my life to a halt. I was on disability. I was unable to leave the house. And this practice has certainly changed, if not saved, my life. And I'm very pleased, honored to be part of a large circle of people who not only are helped by this practice, but can now help others in the same way. So I like to offer this ongoing series of calming anxiety by living mindfully as a way of sharing some of the tools and techniques that I've used, discovered for myself, that have helped me in my journey on my path, such that they may help others as well. Because we all encounter very different things on our paths, but as humans, we tend to experience them in similar ways. So even though our paths may be very different, a lot of the same tools and techniques can still be helpful because of how we are dealing with what it is that we are finding on our path. So with that, why don't we jump into today's sitting? Okay? I always like to begin by imagining that I am suspended from the ceiling by a piece of string attached to the top of my head, as a nice cue to sit up straight without adding any extra tension to do so. If you're feeling some tension right now, that's completely fine. We're not here to try to eradicate tension, because that usually involves trying to force it away, which is just adding more tension to tension. And that doesn't really get rid of tension, does it? It just piles more on top. So if there is some tension here right now, mental, emotional, physical, that's fine. We can allow that to be here. And we can allow it to leave in its own time, which may or may not be today. I also like to notice what is beneath me. The floor, chair, cushion. So there's a sense of support, of grounding. Something is holding me up. And I can allow it to do so. Let's take a moment to notice that grounding at the bottom and this gentle lift at the top. And whatever else we have in between the two, for us here, right now, however it is. And if you haven't already, you may begin to bring your attention to your breathing. And you may notice that you begin to control or shape your breathing when bringing attention to it. It's very common to do this. It's very hard to watch the breathing without doing that. And in some practices, we do shape and control the breathing, but we do not have to do that here. We can simply watch each inhale and each exhale, however they are. Long or short, deep or shallow, pleasant or unpleasant. We're simply here to see it however it is. And if we find that we do not want to relinquish our control or shaping of the breathing, or perhaps we don't know how to relinquish our control or shaping of the breathing, then we can simply watch the controlling and shaping of the breathing. And much like tension, we don't need to force it away. We can allow it to leave in its own time. So however your breathing is for you right now, long, short, deep, shallow, pleasant, unpleasant, constant, changing, controlled, uncontrolled, however it is. Let's take a moment to notice that. Let's see what it does. Just see what it does. Now, the technique that I would like to work with today is what I call the surfing technique. I find this one helpful for when there's a lot of racing energy. And racing energy, I've found, doesn't always necessarily feel like what we think of as being energetic. I found that even feeling tired or fatigue I found that even these states, these processes, because that's what these all are, processes, feelings, interpretations of what we're feeling, perception. These feelings that we might label tiredness or fatigue, even they have energy. It's just a certain kind of energy. Or perhaps we have the energy of racing thoughts. Very often when I'm feeling some kind of rushing energy that feels perhaps overwhelming or otherwise unpleasant in some way, there's this natural tendency to try to stop it, to dam it up. And the mental image I always get when I'm doing that is of me trapped in these white water rapids. Not with a boat, just me actually in these white water rapids, getting swept away by the water. And the harder I struggle, the more I go under. And then at some point, I finally realize, well, wait a minute. This isn't working. I keep struggling, keep fighting, keep losing. Maybe it's time to try something different. Well, what's different? Well, different would be not fighting, not struggling. And I find a funny thing happens. When I stop fighting, stop struggling. That the energy rather than pulling me down as a result of the struggle, actually lifts me up. I can actually begin to ride on top of the energy. Allow it to carry me. Now, it's not that I'm in control of it. It still doesn't feel particularly pleasant. But at least I'm not drowning. I'm not wasting the energy I do have struggling against this other energy. As the Buddha might say, we might still be experiencing some pain or discomfort, but at least we're not adding suffering on top of it. So now we're just surfing this energy. As we open up to the energetic experience in this way, we get to know a little bit better what it actually feels like. Do we get to know what it actually feels like when we're fighting it? Not really. We don't see how it actually moves when we're trying to make it stop moving. I mean, not only does that not work, it keeps us in a state of literal ignorance, a not knowing. And what is it that we're not knowing about? Well, what are these waves of energy but us? We're fighting ourselves, remaining ignorant of ourselves. The very first insight I ever had in this practice was, if you fight yourself, you've already lost. And how could we possibly fight ourselves and win? It doesn't make sense. So rather than fighting some of our energy with what we think of as another part of our energy, we open to all of it. It's all really just one big pool. Or in this case, the pool may feel like whitewater rapids. And we can use our breathing as our surfboard as we ride these waves of our own energy. In time, as we gain some steadiness and we start to replace our ignorance of these processes with knowledge and understanding, we might become stable enough that at some point we can actually jump off onto a riverbank. And from there, perhaps, climb up to a cliff, a higher vantage point. From where we can look down and see these rushing waters, this energy. We can still feel it. We can still hear it. It's still there. It's not gone. But now we're seeing it differently, experiencing it differently. Not drowning, not getting carried away. Able to observe how it actually is. In time, as we get better and better at this, as our ignorance gets replaced by knowledge, we reach a level of understanding, of clear seeing. Which is how we develop our wisdom. Our wisdom of how things actually are. How we're dealing with how things actually are. And how when we change how we're dealing with how things actually are, our lives can change quite drastically. We find that we can experience some pain, some discomfort, without adding suffering on top. That's the way of walking the path to our freedom. Or in this case, we may surf to our freedom. Thank you, everyone. I'll hang on for a couple of minutes if anyone would like to share or ask anything in the chat. Hi, Ellen. Thank you for that. I'm glad you enjoyed. The surfing technique is one of my favorites. As a type A person who's always worried about efficiency and trying to get things done, racing thoughts tends to be it's kind of my default a lot of the time. So this is something I've found very helpful, because my natural inclination was always to try to fight that. And as someone whose anxiety is triggered by fatigue and exhaustion, trying to fight some of my energy with some of my other energy, of course, depletes me. Go figure. and triggers anxiety, which becomes more unpleasant, which then I try to fight that, which depletes me more, which causes more anxiety. You see where this goes. So the surfing technique is one I found very helpful for opening up to the energy that's here, even if it may not feel the way I want it to feel in a particular moment. It's still far better to feel it as it is, in my experience, than to try to stop it. Hey, Farnaz, great to see you. It's difficult when we worry about others as well. It's important to note when we cross that line between caring, wishing the best for someone, even someone extremely close to us, and noticing when that turns into our own suffering. There's nothing wrong with feeling energetic emotions like fear or anger, these things we think are very negative, like maybe we're not supposed to feel them, especially in a spiritual practice, which is absurd. There's nothing wrong with these states. These states are ways of communicating with us, saying, hey, there's something here that needs to be addressed. The problem is when we continue to engage with those states, those processes, in a way that is not helpful. So we can take the impetus, the motivation of those to make changes where they need to be made. But if something is beyond our control, or if we have already set the causes and conditions in place skillfully as we can, and there's not much else that we can do, the additional stress we put on ourselves at that point, those circles that we run into, or I should say the circles we run around in, those are suffering lines of thinking. And much like the energy that I was talking about in the sitting, it's not that we just tell them to stop and they stop. It's a matter of observing them exactly as they are. What's coming up here? These thoughts of fear and concern and so forth. Well, what am I doing with them? I'm replaying them over and over and over and over again in my mind. How's that working out for me? Well, not so good. And even just the process of watching that play out over and over again is enough to change our relationship with the process. Just clearly seeing it isn't necessarily the whole, it's not the whole thing. But it is a crucial early step. In my experience, when we start to see it clearly enough, changes start to seem to happen on their own. So my first step is not unlike what I just detailed in the surfing technique, which is riding the energy and seeing where it goes, where it takes us. And that gives us more information. More information about ourselves, really, because it's our energy. And if it's trying to carry us somewhere, maybe we go check it out. And then we have some more information for what to do next. I think I'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much, everyone. Cheers.